excited to be starting the third year of our Emerging Scholar Fellowship with this year's fellow, Leora Orenshein. It's wonderful to see so many of you who have participated in the first 2 years return to us again and to see new faces as well. For those of you who are new to this initiative at Mayan, I'd like to direct you to this flyer with the information on the back about the program, or to the Mayan website for much more information. One of the pillars of this program is having an enthusiastic and discerning group of students for our fellows to teach as they explore the pedagogy of adult education. So your presence this morning is a direct contribution to the success of this initiative. Thank you. I want to welcome, and I invite all of you to welcome Rivi Kubko-Tedek, Leora's mentor for this class, who flew from Denver to be here as part of the Emerging Scholar Fellowship program. Rivi is a recognized, exceptional Jewish educator who recently retired after many years as head of school at the Seattle Hebrew Academy. This year, she is interim head of school at Denver Academy of Torah. As mentor, Rivi has worked with Leora on class design and pedagogy for this class, and will be meeting with her again to discuss takeaways for Leora to use as she plans her next class on January 5th. I want to thank Talia Greenboim, our Director of Education and Engagement, for the immense amount of hard work she has put into this morning's class and the program as a whole. Yuri Yanovich, Mayan's President, and Nicole Kaufman, our Director of Finance and Operations, for all their contributions to this program. The members of the Emerging Scholarship Committee, Debbie Patesh, Ziva Hasselfeld, and Sue Levison, for the careful and thoughtful work that they all do. The Maimonides Kehila, for their co-sponsorship of today's class and the help they gave us this morning. The Mayan board members who helped today in various ways. I'm not going to name names because I'll inevitably miss somebody who helped. And the entire Mayan board for the support of this initiative. This fellowship is funded outside of Mayan's operating budget, so a special thank you to our foundational donors who ensured we could create this program. I hope that if this innovative project to support emerging female Torah scholars become skilled adult educators speaks to you, you will help us support it. Thank you. If you missed any classes from our previous 2 fellows, they are available on our YouTube channel and well worth the time. Now to our class. Please welcome Leora Orenshein as our Emerging Scholar Fellowship and our teacher this morning. Her bio is also on this sheet. Leora impressed the committee with her enthusiasm for learning and her passion for spreading that enthusiasm to others, especially women. Leora, we are excited to learn with you. Please come and teach us.
Thank you, Deborah. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's very inspiring to see so many people coming out on a cold morning. I mean, I live in Teaneck. It's similar weather to Boston. Just a few degrees colder here. A cold Sunday morning. Everyone coming around to sit and really learn Torah together really is very inspiring. So thank you all for being here and for learning together. So in the spirit of changing the clocks last night, or potentially it may have been a coincidence, we are going to learn a little bit today about sleep in Judaism. We're going to talk about the value of sleep, exploring a bracha that perhaps, we'll see if we should say it or not, a bracha that perhaps the rabbis instituted on sleep, and really take a deep dive into sleep this morning. So I hope everybody is well rested, has lots of energy, and is ready to learn together. By way of introduction, when I was younger in sleepaway camp, I remember playing this game, this iconic game called Would You Rather. The way Would You Rather goes is either you pick it out of cards, or someone kind of just makes it up, of these crazy decisions that you have to make. And you have to choose, would you rather this one, or would you rather this one? Things like, would you rather only eat chocolate every day for the rest of your life, or wear the same shirt every day but without ever washing it? You got to choose between the lesser of the 2 evils, and everyone is saying, oh, I'd rather chocolate, I'd rather. So one would you rather that stood out to me, and I remember ad hayom hazeh until today, was, would you rather your shower always be just a little bit too cold, or wake up every morning getting just not enough sleep the last night? And I just remember it being like, those are both terrible. I can't choose. You know, that feeling of like, you get in the shower just like, oh, it's just like a little cold, like during the 9 days, try to like, oh, not so warm. Or when you wake up in the morning, you were just like a little too late last night, like a little hard to get out of bed in the morning. And so we see that, when we don't get enough sleep, it really affects our day. When you go through your day, probably one of the most common complaints when you're just talking to someone and say, oh, how are you doing today? How's your day going? Good, I'm tired, good, exhausted, up late at night, woke up early this morning. We're always tired. We're always in this sense of running, and we're always feeling a little bit overexhausted, a little bit overextended. And the role that sleep plays in our lives is vital. We need to sleep in order to feel energized, in order to feel like we are able to take on the day. So let's talk a little bit just to start, to kind of frame our Bracha of Hamapil, to talk about, does Judaism value sleep? Is there a value, is there an emphasis, is there something positive that the Torah has to say, that the rabbis have to say about sleep? So there are two really diverging approaches. We'll start with the first one. Fitting that we are in the Maimonides school, we will start with a source from none other than Maimonides himself, from the Rambam. So if you turn to source number 1, the Rambam tells us in Hilchos Deos, where the Rambam talks about life in general and hashkafa of the world, the Rambam says, Hayom halayla kaf dalet sha'ot. The day and the night is comprised of a total of 24 hours. And the Rambam says, how should you spend those 24 hours? Every day as humans on this earth, we are given 24 hours to make use of. And the Rambam says, as Jewish people, how should we be spending that time? What should we be doing with those 24 hours? And he gives us a little outline. This is just a snippet of his outline. The Rambam says, Dain lo la'adam, it's enough for a person, lishon, to sleep, shlishan, a person should sleep for a third of those 24 hours. The Rambam mandates in his Sefer of Halachot, that what's the halacha, or what is, it's Hilchos Deos, so it's not exactly halacha, but it's more of, how does the Rambam think we should live our lives? He thinks the ideal is to sleep 8 hours a night. A little bit of a high bar, right? Definitely the sleep experts, people would agree with the Rambam. It makes sense that the Rambam would have this approach because, who was the Rambam? The Rambam was a doctor. The Rambam was famously, right? He was a rabbi, he was a philosopher. But one of his professions is really he was a doctor. And so, in the spirit of looking out for a person's well-being, the Rambam says, a person should really strive to sleep 8 hours a night. Now, whether the Rambam himself really took his own advice and really himself slept 8 hours a night is pretty questionable. In other places, the Rambam talks about what he would do during his day and what his crazy schedule would look like. And it doesn't seem like the Rambam himself would really sleep 8 hours a night. But in theory, the Rambam says a person should sleep 8 hours a night. Now, on the other extreme, the Vilna Gaon was famed to have slept a total of 2 hours per 24-hour period. And not only 2 hours, but he would only sleep those 2 hours in 30-minute increments. 30-minute naps throughout a 24-hour period. Now, I have an almost 1-year-old, and so I can relate a little bit to the Vilna Gaon, but not by choice. The Vilna Gaon himself, he did this on principle. The Vilna people, his family, his friends, the community would really try to convince him, say, look, it's really not good for your health to sleep only 2 hours. Like, you're not going to be able to live a long time and teach us Torah for so many years if you don't take care of your health. And Vilna Gaon said, I got to learn Torah. Yoma Malayla, day and night. Hours that I spend sleeping are hours that I'm wasting of the precious time that I have to learn Torah and to teach the community. I can only sleep for 2 hours. So we kind of see this dichotomy, you see. Right? The Rambam saying 8 hours of sleep. You should, strive high, full night of sleep. Whereas Vilna Gaon saying 2 hours of sleep in 30-minute increments, really sleep only exactly the amount that you need to survive, and no more than that. So we kind of see this back and forth. Good to sleep, bad to sleep. Now, we'll just look at, before we start delving into the Bracha of Hamapil, look at a little assortment of sources in Judaism that either lean to the value of sleep or against the value of sleep. So let's quickly run through a few of them on our source sheet. If you look at source number 2, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, this is one of my favorite Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. It talks about the 48 ways to acquire the Torah. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, in order to be a person who owns the Torah is theirs, who's able to learn Torah, there are 48 different attributes that a person should have in order to be a person who is able to learn Torah. And most of the attributes are what you would expect in learning Torah. For example, we can read through them. The Torah nickname Arba'im U'Shmona Torah. There are 48 ways to acquire the Torah. The Elohim, and here they are. And here I give you just a sprinkling of a few of the attributes. The Talmud, through learning, through doing what we're doing right now, through sitting and delving into sources. B'Shmiat Ha'ozen, and listening and being a careful listener, a discerning listener, picking up on nuances, Ba'arichat Svatayim, in choosing the words carefully that you're going to say, in organizing our thoughts. Right? These are normal ways that a teacher would tell a student that if they want to learn information, this is what they should do. They should listen well, they should write, they should make their thoughts concise. The Mishnah goes on. B'Yishuv, B'Mikra, B'Mishnah. You can become a Torah scholar by learning Torah, by learning Chumash, by learning Mishnah. And as you continue going through the list, a surprising attribute comes up. A way to become a better Torah learner is B'mi'ut Sheina, less sleep. Less sleep is the key to Torah learning. It says, the Mishnah is as if saying, like the Vilna Gaon, if you want to be a person who could really learn Torah and you want to maximize your time, you will diminish the hours of sleep that you have per night so that you could really engage in the Torah and spend your time valuably. So this Mishnah seems to leave on the side of sleep is bad. Perhaps there are many ways to interpret this Mishnah. We'll probably circle back to it. But mi'ut sheina, the Mishnah puts this value, this emphasis on having a little bit of sleep. Now continuing on, the Gemara in source number 3, the Gemara and Halacha. The Gemara and Halacha says, sleep, a shocking statement. Sheina, echad mishishim lemisa. Sleep is a 60th of death. A stark statement of the Gemara. Needs a lot of unpacking. What exactly does that mean, that sleep is a 60th of death? Probably something of like that Hashem takes away our neshama at night and gives us back, restores our soul in the morning. Sleep is the most similar thing to death that we can experience in our lives. Whichever way you may interpret it, clearly the Gemara is saying something negative about sleep. Sleep is a 60th of death. Now, continuing even on with further negative sources on sleep, another Mishnah paragraph, on source number 4, talks about not sleep at night, but Sheina Shel Shachris, sleeping in the morning, i.e., taking naps. And what does the Mishnah say about taking naps? You can look in the last line of the bold. The Mishnah says, naps are motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. They take a person out of this world. They totally remove a person from this world, i.e., it's not a good thing to take naps. And all these sources seem to kind of be frowning upon sleep, saying that sleep is a bad thing, shouldn't take naps, shouldn't sleep a lot if you want to be able to learn Torah. We should really try to minimize our sleep, kind of all in the Vilna Gaon camp. But we know that sleep is vital to our existence, right? We know that we need to sleep. We know that in order to feel refreshed, in order to be in a good mood during the day, to be able to interact with people, in order to be functional humans, clearly we need sleep. But the question is sleep only something that we do out of necessity? And that if we could be perfect humans, if we could be like the angels, it would be better for us not to sleep? Or is sleep something that is valuable in some way? Is there an intrinsic value to sleeping? Of course we need to sleep. Of course we need it to be functional. But is there a value beyond that the Torah gives us? And I think perhaps an answer to that can be found in the Ramban in the next source. I was very excited when I found this Ramban because I found it just recently. And it's not actually on Parsha Bereshit. It's the Ramban in Parsha Va'eschanan. But he's talking about Briat Ha'olam and Parsha Bereshit that we just read in the Parsha Shavua, just coming off of the Chagim on Simchat Torah. So it's very exciting to find this source. And the Ramban is commenting on, if you look at the order of creation in the world, by every day of creation, it says that the Torah tells us, Vayar Ki Tov. God saw that it was good. Almost every day, it doesn't say it on day 2, it says that on day 3, but almost every day, the Torah tells us that God created something, Vayar Ki Tov, and God saw that it was good. But on the 6th day, there's something a little bit unique. The 6th day doesn't just say, Vayar Ki Tov. The 6th day says, V'hinei Tov Ma'od. The day that humans were created, the Torah says that Hashem saw that it was not just good, but very good. Not just Tov, but Tov Ma'od. And the Ramban says, usually we think of that as Hashem saying that mankind is amazing, and the day that humans were created, it was Tov Ma'od, better than all the other creations. The Ramban is a fascinating interpretation. He quotes the Midrash from Bereshit Rabbah. And if we could look together at source number 5, the Ramban says, a person should yochal v'yishan, a person should eat and sleep, v'yas et tzrachav, do all the bodily functions and the daily kind of things that a person needs to do, kidei kiyum haguf la'avod Hashem, in order to be able to be a person who worships Hashem. And he says, Ke'inyan sha'amru, v'hinei tov ma'od, when the Torah says the 6th day was not just tov, but tov ma'od, what does that ma'od refer to? The Ramban says, zo shena. That is sleep. When the Torah calls everything in the world good. When the Torah wants to say one thing in the entire creation of the world that's very good, it's sleep. That sleep is this tov ma'od. Sleep is this amazing natural phenomenon, something that is so great. And by the Ramban saying that the Torah is saying that sleep is this tov ma'od kind of thing, it seems that the Torah is telling us that there's a value to sleep beyond just being a human necessity. There's something good about sleep. There's something very good. There's something tov ma'od about sleep. And what is that, is the Ramban telling us? The Ramban is telling us, let's read the next line together. Really? Is sleep something good? We saw all these sources that say that sleep is the 60th of death, that sleep takes us out of this world, that sleep is not such a good thing. And the Ramban answers, when a person sleeps, even just a little bit, even that 30-minute nap in the middle of the dawn, you sleep just a tiny bit, it invigorates us, it allows us to go and engage in learning Torah. And what the Ramban is saying is that sleep is so powerful because it refreshes us, it reinvigorates us, it sets us up in order to live our lives. And not just to live our lives, to be osik b'Torah, to be, like he says, la'avod Hashem, to serve Hashem. We need to be able to sleep in order to refresh ourselves, to be people who are able to serve God. And we see this in perhaps the way that the Jewish day is set up. The Jewish day begins not by the day, but it begins at night. Right? It was recently Rosh Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, and the first time that we said Ya'alav Yavo on Rosh Chodesh is not a Shachar in the morning, it was a Ma'ariv at night. The Jewish day begins at night, perhaps as if to say, what is the purpose of night? The purpose of night, the purpose of sleeping, is not to end our day, to crash at the end of the day, to recover from our day. The purpose of sleeping at night is to set us up for the day to come. Is to sleep so we can wake up reinvigorated, refreshed, able to conquer the day, able to serve God in the best way that we possibly can. And in this light, it makes sense that Chazal, it makes sense that the rabbis would institute a blessing upon going to sleep. We see, like the Rambam said, that sleep is supposed to take up a third of our day. And I think it's notable, even the language that the Rambam uses. The Rambam doesn't just say, you should sleep for 8 hours a day, kind of giving us a quantitative measure of time for how much we should sleep. The Rambam says, you should sleep for a third of your day. He puts it into the perspective of a day, as if saying, sleep should be a significant portion of your day. Sleep is a major part of your day that you do. Not just 8 hours, but it's a third of what makes up our very valuable 24-hour days. And we see, like the Ramban is saying, that there's something positive about sleep. Sleep sets us up in order to worship God. Sleep sets us up to be refreshed and reinvigorated for the day. And so, putting that all together, it would make sense, as we have bracha in so many areas of life in Judaism, that's such a major and such an important value part of our day, that the rabbis would be mitakein a bracha. And that is what we are going to focus on today, the Bracha of Hamapil. Now, everyone can turn just to the back page of your packets for a moment. We're going to look at the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, and this is the most initial source that the Gemara gives us for saying this blessing of Hamapil. Now, the Bracha of Hamapil is a very unfamiliar bracha to many people. The Bracha of Hamapil, I didn't start saying this surely until much later. Growing up, I never said Hamapil. It is very universal for people to say Kriya Shema L'Mitzvah, to say Shema when you're going to bed. It's very universal to sing Hamal Chagoel. they tell a beautiful story that it has in my Koren Ani Tefillah Siddur, a beautiful story of going to get children after the Holocaust, going to rescue children, and they were in a monastery and didn't know which kids were the Jewish kids and which kids were not Jewish kids. They said, you know, a rabbi came in and said, you know, I'm here to take the Jewish kids. And the monastery said, sorry, we don't know anymore which ones are Jewish and which ones aren't. You know, they were taken at a very young age from their families. We don't know which ones to give you. And the rabbi who walked into the monastery said, I'll figure out which ones are mine. And he put up his hand and he said, Shema Yisrael Hashem. And the Jewish children finished his sentence, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And he turned to the head of the monastery and said, these are my children. I'll take them. And we see it's so universal to Jewish life to say this declaration of God's existence, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, every night before we go to sleep. We see a lot of people say Hamalacha before they go to sleep. We just had on Simchas Torah, we had Kol HaNa'arim, a very meaningful moment for parents, for grandparents, where they hold up a giant talis and all the children gather around in shul. Sometimes the whole congregation sings Hamalacha. Sometimes, they did in my shul, only the first stanza everybody sang, the second stanza only the children sing. You hear the voices of the young children singing Hamalacha. You know, it's this beautiful moment. And these are things that Chazal said we should do. Chazal said we should say Shema before we go to sleep. We have a custom of saying Hamal Chagol before going to sleep. And yet, Chazal in the Gemara that we're about to see say that there is a bracha that the rabbis instituted on sleep, and we should say this blessing before we go to sleep at night. And yet, the Bracha of Hamapil is so unfamiliar. It is so much less frequently said than these much more universal blessings of Shema Yisrael, of Hamal Chagol. So what we're going to do today is we are going to delve into this Bracha of Hamapil, understand what is this bracha, why did the rabbis institute it, what are kind of the ins and outs of the bracha, how does the nature of the bracha kind of inform on the halachot of it, and perhaps in the end we'll get to that point of why is it that so many people don't say Hamapil nowadays, and the question of should we say Hamapil nowadays. So to start, let's just look at the Gemara together, where Chazal tell us that we should say this bracha of Hamapil. If you look at the Gemara, in the Gemara in Masechet Brachot on Daf Samech Amud Bet, the Gemara here is going through all sorts of different brachot that we say in Judaism. We'll talk a little bit more about the context later on. But the Gemara is talking about all different kinds of brachot and the nusach, the type of bracha, and the words of the bracha we should say. It talks about the bracha of Asher Yatzar, the Birkot HaShachar we say in the morning. And if you look here at the bracket, the Gemara talks about what to do when you go to sleep. And notice the specific words, because the specific language that the Gemara uses is going to be important in understanding the technicalities of the bracha later on. The Gemara tells us, Hanichnas lishein al mitato, a person who enters his bed to go to sleep at night, someone who comes and lies down in bed, should say, over here, Mishema Yisrael ad v'haya yivshamava, should say the first paragraph of Shema, Ve'omer, and also should say, Baruch Hamapil Chevle Shina al Einai. Blessed are you, Hashem, who makes the bonds of sleep fall onto my eyes, Utsnuma al Afapai, and makes slumber fall on my eyelids, Me'ir li Yishon Ba'ayin, and Hashem lights up the pupil of the eye. We're going to have to understand what exactly this means. And it continues to go, although this part we're going to see is actually not all included in the Nusach of the Bracha we say nowadays. The Gemara continues, Yehirat Som Milfanecha, it should be your will, Hashem, Hashem Elokai, Shetashki Yiveni L'Shalom, that you should lie me down in peace, V'teincha ki b'Toratecha, and you should give me my portion in Torah, V'targileni Leidei Mitzvah, V'al Targileni Leidei Aveira, Hashem, you should put me on the path of doing mitzvot and not of doing aveirot, V'al Tavieni Leidei Chet, V'lo Leidei Aveira, V'lo Leidei Nisayon, V'lo Leidei B'Sayon, Hashem, you shouldn't make any kinds of negative things come my way. I shouldn't sin. I shouldn't have challenges in my day. V'yishlopi yitzer hatov, va'al yishlopi yitzer hara. And you should always make my yitzer tov beat my yitzer hara. My positive inclination should always beat my negative inclination. V'tzitzileni mipeg hara u'chalaim ra'im. sorts of illnesses. And this is interesting, we'll talk about this a little bit also. You should save me, Hashem, from any bad dreams. Don't give me any nightmares, no scary dreams. And my bed should be just before you. My bed should be perfect before you. I don't understand what exactly that means. And you should light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. This seems to be referring probably right to the bracha, the Gemara and Bracha that we saw that sleep is a 60th of death. And the bracha ends, Baruch atah Hashem, hameir la'olam lo lechodo. Hashem, you are blessed that you light up the entire world in your glory. So we see that the rabbis instituted a bracha upon going to sleep. When you go into your bed at night, you should say this bracha of Hamapil. What we did not just now is we read together the Gemara, did a basic translation of the word Hamapil. But before we really delve into the nature of this bracha and the ins and outs of this bracha, I want everyone to become more familiar. I feel like they really own the bracha and really know the substance of the bracha of Hamapil that we're talking about. So everyone could turn to page 2 of your source sheets. We're going to do a little bit of chavrusa time. Everybody can do this either with the person next to you or on your own if you prefer. What we're going to do is do a careful reading of the text of the bracha of Hamapil. You're going to read it in the Hebrew or the English or both. Carefully translate, carefully look at the bracha, try to really zoom in, understand the nuances, and look to the guiding questions underneath in order to kind of get that really critical read of Gemara, of the bracha. We're going to talk about what themes we see in the bracha, which lines kind of stand out, and why do those lines stand out. And we'll close with questions that people have on the bracha. And that'll kind of springboard us into our discussion of really delving into the nature of this bracha, understanding its halachic technicalities, and really getting a better picture of the bracha. We'll do this for, let's say, 5 or so minutes. We'll see where people are at. And I'll be here and I'll be around to answer questions, talk about the sources with everyone. Happy Chavrusa time, everybody. Okay, let us regroup and discuss our findings in our exploration. What themes are we seeing in this bracha? What themes are people seeing? Let's raise the common themes to the table. Protection, that God will protect us when we sleep. Peaceful sleep. Having a restful, a peaceful sleep. Sleeping the whole night, no waking up.
There's a lot about, sorry.
More fundamentally than that is not knowing what's going to happen when we sleep.
Not knowing, are we going to wake up from this sleep? What's going to happen during our sleep? Are we going to have bad dreams? Kind of this loss of control when we're sleeping. Putting ourselves in God's hands.
There's a lot about eyes.
A lot of the imagery of eyes. The
When-
bonds of slumber on our eyes, our eyelids.
Right, you're not seeing at night, so everything is, is dark and
Right.
scary and dangerous.
Feeling of darkness, of vulnerability during the nighttime.
I was just going to continue on that thought that nighttime and darkness were traditionally times of danger, of insecurity. And the very last line is beautiful, beautiful contrast that Hashem illuminates the world with His glory. So
Beautiful.
Light versus dark.
Especially in the times of Chazal, the nighttime was very vulnerable. Nowadays, it can be nighttime and you can be in a well-lit home and you feel like it's the middle of the day. In those times, they would have a little flickering candle. The nighttime was very, very vulnerable, very dark. And yet this contrast of Hashem puts slumber on my eyelids and it's dark, I feel insecure, but that God has the ability to kind of light up the entire world in His glory. What else?
Well, I keep thinking about that paragraph that comes in when we do when the Kohanim do Bracha.
Yes.
And how positive dreams are in that state, and there's
So
none of that
interesting.
in here.
So interesting. It's a little bit reminiscent of, we're very familiar with it from the Shalosh Regalim just happened. We had a few times at Bracha Kohanim when the Kohanim chant and they do their singing, and we see that small paragraph that if I have any good dreams, Hashem, I'm saying you should make my good dreams come true. This is much more negative on dreams. Hashem, don't let me have any bad dreams. Don't let me have bad thoughts during the night. Night is a scary time. What lines are standing out to people? What lines are an iconic line, a shocking line? What's a line that resonates?
Like my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death.
Lest I sleep the sleep of death. It's like, every night when I go to sleep, am I supposed to fear the sleep of death? It's a little bit intense to go to sleep every night with that, a little fearful.
Well, my Bertha pointed out, like, the touch givenu leshalom and tamidenu leshalom. And obviously, you know, it's reader response. We're reading it through our lives. But, like, we were both like, oh, yeah, like, don't go to bed in a fight.
Nice.
Like we really saw in there some, like, and that's a question that we have, I particularly have for you, like, how do you know when you're, maybe from the context of the sugya, but like, that, are we imposing ourselves on Chazal if we're like seeing this as somehow about like Shalom Bayit and like, or even seeing ourselves in the bracha as women? Like,
are you asking, is it really free for us to discuss what we see in the bracha? Is it the Chazal meant the bracha in a certain way that I should go down to sleep in peace, meaning I shouldn't be attacked by wild animals or whatever Chazal means by peace? Or are we kind of open to interpret, I should,
or even before that, let's say we are open to, but do you feel like you have a sense of what the authorial intent was?
What really was the intent of Chazal when they were creating this bracha?
Sort of add our layers of meaning, but I'm just curious, like, was that the original meaning?
It's interesting. It would seem, I think, like the more pshat reading, the more basic reading of this idea of shalom, of going to sleep at night, seems like Hashem warning off the demons. There are some Kabbalistic sources and talking about how Hamapil is this kind of like, there are the demons and the bad omens and bad spirits that come at night and we should ward them off. But on the other hand, we'll see later, there is a parallel bracha, perhaps Hamapil, that we say at the end of Birkat HaShachar every day. The bracha of Hama'avir Sheina Al Einai Utsuma Mafakai, kind of the foil bracha of waking up in the morning. And in that bracha, we talk a lot about surrounding ourselves with positive influences and the Yetzer Tov, you know, dictating what we do during the day and setting us on a positive path. So in that light, it kind of seems like Shalom could be more like an interpersonal kind of thing. Any other lines that stand out to people?
I got interesting. It says, "Lay my bed offered be perfect before you." Like nothing else was really about like other things. Like it was all about like my protection and like God. And maybe that's because like we're at like so much of this is like there's danger. We're asking God to protect us, and so offspring is like the next most important thing. But I just thought it was interesting that it's like the only time that we're expanding outside.
It's notable that one's children makes it into this bracha. The bracha seems to be very specific about the person saying the bracha. That Hashem should put sleep upon my eyelids. That I should be saved from the demons. That I should sleep and I shouldn't have bad dreams. It seems a little bit like, a little random, even though it kind of segues from that my bed, and I sleep on my bed, my children should be perfect for you. But there's clearly a little disconnect between the children piece of it and the slumber upon my eyelids, the going to sleep at night. What questions do people have about the bracha? What questions are you left with after reading this? Not your standard kind of bracha.
So this may relate more to things standing up, but I never, to be honest, I never thought about sleep as coming from Hashem.
Cool. We think of sleep as that we fall asleep.
Right.
It's actually so interesting if you notice the etymology of the word in Hebrew. The bracha is called Hamapil. Hamapil, like, from the word nafal, like, to fall asleep. And usually we think of it as ourselves falling asleep. I go down, I relax, I lie in bed, I fall asleep. We don't usually think of it as Hamapil, as Hashem falls us asleep. Hashem makes us fall asleep. Very interesting.
It's not a question, but also something, especially after October 7th, I found that, at least for me, it's very hard. There's so many things going on in my mind because of anti-Semitism and everything like that. So in some ways it might also be
make the days okay, so that when I go to sleep, I'll be able to
Right.
sleep. Like you talk to the kids, in Israel, and they're having bad dreams and other things like that, so it might also be talking about the days, not just
Right, our dreams are, the Gemara and Halacha talks about this a little bit, about how our dreams are a reflection of our day. So perhaps an element of this bracha is saying, Hashem, please help my day go in a way that's going to set me up to be able to have a peaceful sleep at night. Not for it to be all this commotion, this havoc and craziness that I may not be able to fall asleep. Let it be peaceful. And then hashkiveni l'shalom.
So, two things. One is I always felt like this is sort of very sort of superstitious type of feel to it, right? And we've always I think that is quite going on to sleep sometimes. But my question is not so much about the text itself, but how did it get split that Hamapil precedes Shema?
Great question. We're going to see that in the Mishnah Berurah coming up.
Because I just feel like it's like a good introduction to, like when I say that, then I can go into Shema, because all the rest is almost like rote, but this is like very specific.
Yes.
That takes care of all those
Which
words.
order should we say this in? Should we say this first? Should we say Kriyat Hamapil versus Kriyat Shema? What order do we say them in? Okay, we're going to address those kinds of questions. So now that we delved a little bit into the bracha, we picked up on those themes in the bracha, the slumber, the peacefulness, that asking God to protect us. We have questions about this bracha. What kinds of bracha is this? What are we saying? Maybe it has to do with what connection does it have to our day? What interpersonal connection is it? And what kind of just one person's individual self bracha is this? Now everyone is a little bit more familiar with what we're talking about here. This is the Bracha of Hamapil that the rabbis established to say upon going to sleep. Now we can turn to the next page. And what we're going to do now is we're going to really dive into what is the nature of this bracha? What kind of bracha is this? And by looking really closely into the nature of the bracha, that's going to help propel us into understanding answers to questions like, should we say this first or should we say Shema first? What time of day should we say Hamapil? Should we say Hamapil also when you take a nap or just when you're sleeping at night? There's a myth or maybe a halacha not to talk after Hamapil. Can you talk after saying Hamapil? Can you not? And by really looking into the nature of the bracha, we're going to get answers to a lot of those questions. So the first step to understanding the nature of the bracha is to understand what kind of bracha is Hamapil. Before we talk about the Rambam's categories of brachot, let's just throw out as a group here all sorts of different brachot. Just raise your hand and tell us a bracha. Let's get a whole bunch of different kinds of brachot. Someone give us a bracha. Brachot on food. For example, what are brachot on food? Or in a fashut bracha. Rona, we could say on food, we could say shahakol, mizona, all sorts of brachot on food. That's perhaps the most common kind of bracha that we say in our day. What other brachot are there in general?
Travelers.
Bracha on traveling, such as tefillat haderech, right? We went to another shiur really delving into tefillat haderech. Good. What other kind of brachot do we have? Bracha on a mitzvah. We just had sukkahs and we say al netilat lulav. Before we blow the shofar, we say lishmo kol shofar. Right? All the kind of mitzvah we say before doing a mitzvah. What other brachot?
Prayer.
Prayer. We have in Shemona Esrei, we have many different brachot. Brachot that we are praising God. Brachot that we are thanking God. All kinds of brachot that we say in our tefillah every day. What other kind of brachot?
Wonders, like thunder.
Wonders. Like a bracha on thunder. Like the bracha that we're just coming off of Parshat Noach, the bracha on a rainbow. Brachot on all sorts of natural phenomena. Okay, so let's read the source number 7 together. The Rambam, very clearly, in the beginning of Hilchos Brachos, he outlines for us these 3 categories of brachot. And as we're reading through these categories, I want you to think, in which category does the Bracha of Hamapil most fit into? And why would you think so? The Rambam says, Nitzu kol brachot kulan shalosh minim. In all the kinds of brachot that we say, they can be categorized into 3 different categories. Number 1, brachos hanaya. Brachot on pleasure, brachot on enjoyment, that we generally call brachos hanehenin. What falls under brachos hanehenin? That is brachot like food, like shahakol, like mizono. Perhaps also brachot on smells, like we say, let's say at Havdalah, borim minei bisamin. Things that are pleasurable to us, we say brachos hanehenin. A bracha that we say before getting pleasure from something that God gives us in this world. That's category 1. Category 2, says the Rambam, birchos mitzvos. Bracha that we say on mitzvot. Like we discussed, the bracha on shofar, the bracha on lulav, the bracha on eating matzah on Pesach. Bracha that we say upon performing a mitzvah. Category number 3, the Rambam is a little bit wordier in explaining to us this bracha. Uberchot hodah, brachot of thanksgiving. Shehein derech sheva v'hodaya, that are praising and thanking Hashem, ubakasha, and asking Hashem, k'dei lizkor habore tamid u'liyara mimenu. These are brachot that we say, thanking Hashem and praising Hashem for amazing natural phenomena. And the Rambam tells us that these brachot are instituted so that we will always remember Hashem everywhere we go. So all these different areas of nature, there are brachot instituted in order to appreciate that piece of nature. What falls under this category? Bracha on a rainbow, bracha on thunder, bracha on lightning, bracha on seeing a beautiful mountain or an amazing ocean, all sorts of brachot on natural phenomena. Berachot Kriyat Shema might be Berachot HaMa'orot, or Berachot Kriyat Shema might be Berachot HaMitzvah on the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. So these are our 3 categories. We have Berachot HaNehenen, on pleasure, Berachot HaMitzvah, on mitzvot, and we have Berachot Sheva V'Hoda'ah, on natural phenomena. Which category would you put the Bracha of Hamapil in, and why?
So I have a question about categories.
Yes.
How does praise and thanks get in the same category?
Great question. Why are praise and thanks in the same category? Praising God for an amazing mountaintop or a great ocean is a different kind of bracha than borei nefashot that we say after having a snack. Interesting.
Or just, I'm thanking you for something and I'm asking you for something.
Right, but bakasha also seems a little bit different.
Yeah.
That it might be including by saying bakasha and shevach. This is a little bit reminiscent of the categories of brachot that we say in our Shmona Esrei. And it might be coming to include those brachot that we say in Shmona Esrei as these brachot on amazing things that Hashem does. The category of Berachot Sheva V'Hoda'ah might not only be on thunder and lightning, but may also be on Mashik HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem and Mechaye HaMitim and the phenomenon we talk about when we daven Shmona Esrei. So what category should Hamapil go in?
So I think it's very similar to the ones in Shmona Esrei. And the reason for that structurally is that it begins with a bracha and it ends with a bracha. So that's very much what.
Good. The structure of the bracha might be indicative of what type of bracha it is. That it starts and ends with a bracha, and it seems very similar to the kinds of brachot that we say in Shmona Esrei. So perhaps we would put it in category 3 of Berachot Sheva V'Hoda'ah, praise and thanks to Hashem. What else do people think?
So I agree with that, but for slightly different reason. I think it's because I think it's the words are both the words that we were saying include the Shabbat, the praise, and include Bakasha, the request, and include the Hodaya, the wonder. The last few words are about wonder of God. So I think it actually covers all 3.
What Deborah is saying is that it's not only one of these examples of the Rambam, but it's both Shevach and Hoda'ah and Bakasha. We just read through the blessing of Hamapil, and it seems to actually hit all 3 of those categories that reside within this one category of Shevach Hoda'ah. Would anyone like to argue the other side, to say that it potentially fits into a different one of these 3 categories?
I could see this. My gut is that it falls into the 3rd category, but I definitely see an argument for both of the others. One, maybe this is like if you have a harder time sleeping, you would easily fall into A, but like, I think that like when you get a good night's sleep, like it's the most amazing thing.
Right.
So like it's like seeing a beautiful mountaintop. Like you wake up feeling amazing and wonderful. So I
You could
definitely
say a different buffalo when you wake up.
but even and then the other, I actually disagree with like some of the first early sources. Was it like whoever sleeps 2 hours a night, yeah. I actually think there's a mitzvah in sleeping. Like, you can't take care of yourself. I can't learn Torah. If I got 2 hours sleep one time, I couldn't be here paying attention. So I really think that, like, we have mitzvahs to take care of our body, and I think that this, like, sleep really falls into that category.
Okay, so it seems that there potentially are compelling arguments to put it in any category. Most people's gut feeling is to kind of put it in that Bracha of Avodah, that we are praising Hashem and thanking Hashem for these amazing phenomenon that Hashem has in nature. But potentially we could put it in Birchot HaMitzvah, although we're not going to really see poskim who put it in Birchot HaMitzvah, because like the Ramban said, it really sets us up to serve God and to learn Torah, but it's not such a tangible mitzvah to put it in that category, perhaps. And there's another category, maybe we're going to see it as a Birchot Hanen, that there is nothing better than waking up after having a great night of sleep, or feeling so tired at night, you're exhausted, you just collapse on your bed and fall asleep. If we're talking about hana, if we're talking about getting pleasure, certainly there is a measure of pleasure that we are going to get in sleeping at night that would put it into this category, roughly. So we are going to see two major poskim, two major areas of two major commentaries in halacha that are going to have a disagreement putting it into these two different categories. And when we see these two different categories, these two types of the nature of the Bracha of Hamapil, we're also going to come out with different halachot about the Bracha of Hamapil that come as they naturally emerge from learning about the nature of it. It's going to be an argument, although they didn't live exactly the same time period, between the Mishnah Brura and the Chayei Adam. The Mishnah Brura is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. The Mishnah Brura is sometimes more famously known for his other sefer, although the Mishnah Brura is a monumental sefer, for his other sefer on Lashon Hara called the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim is the author of the Mishnah Brura, and he is going to be in contention with the Chayei Adam. The Chayei Adam was famously a businessman who happened to have written a halacha sefer talking all about the halachot of daily life, the halachot of Orach Chaim, and only after he published his sefer, people suddenly realized that this man is a huge Talmid Chacham. His next sefer is called the Chachmat Adam. You kind of see him going up from just like the Chayei Adam to someone who is wise, the Chachmat Adam. Once he has been recognized and they gave him smicha, they realized that this guy was a big Talmid Chacham. And so we're going to have a debate between the Mishnah Brura, the Chafetz Chaim, and between the Chayei Adam about what is the nature of this Bracha of Hamapil. So let's go into the Mishnah Brura first, in source number 8. We'll read the Mishnah Brura together, and as we go through it, we'll gain some more understanding of the nature of this Bracha. The Mishnah Brura says, Min Lashon HaShulchan Aruch mashma, it seems when you read the language of the Shulchan Aruch, the Birkat Hamapil Omer Achar Kriyat Shema. The Mishnah Brura is talking about what order should we say Kriyat Shema and Hamapil Eden. And the Mishnah Brura says that first you should say Kriyat Shema, and then you should say Hamapil. You should say Hamapil closest to going to sleep at night. Why should you say Hamapil close to going to sleep at night? Kedei shetei habracha smucha l'sheina, so that you say the bracha right before going to sleep. Why would you have to say the bracha right before going to sleep? Which category would that put this into? If you have to say the bracha and then do the thing right away. Either Birchot HaMitzvah or Birchot Hanen, right? We say the mitzvah on lulav and then we shake the lulav. Say the bracha shakol and then we take a drink of water. If you were to say the bracha of hamotzi on Shabbos day, and then, someone's cutting the challah and giving out, and it's taking a while, if people started talking in between, they wouldn't be able to eat the challah, because that would be considered a hefsek, an interruption between the bracha and what they're doing. So the Mishnah Brura says, you should say Hamapil, and right after Hamapil, that should be the last thing you say, you should go to sleep. Let's see which of those two categories he puts it in. He continues to say, Umasha korei achar kach, yoshe b'seiter ve'inach. There are a number of psukim that a lot of people say in between the Bracha of Hamapil and going to sleep. All sorts of psukim, the Torah about Hashem protecting us at night. And he says, the Mishnah Brura says, how are you allowed to say those after saying Hamapil if you have to say Hamapil and then immediately after Hamapil go to sleep? Seems like an interruption. And he says, don't worry, lo have hefsek. It's not an interruption because these psukim are also talking about protection, and it's the same type of thing as Hamapil, which is talking about protecting us at night. And so you have to say the Bracha of Hamapil, you could say some of these interim sukkim, and then right afterwards, you should go to sleep. And then in the next if he says, "V'lo yikra kriyat shema, k'sheyichanes lishon, ela k'sheroa shehashina ba'a alav." The Mishnah Berurah says, don't say the Bracha of Hamapil until that exact moment when you feel the slumber coming upon you. Don't say Hamapil right when you get into bed, and then you know it's going to take you a little time to fall asleep, and you're going to turn over and tossing and turning. You should lie down in bed, wait until the exact moment right as you feel like your eyes are just closing, and in that moment say, oh, gotta say Hamapil, and then fall asleep at that moment. What's the Mishnah Berurah emphasizing? He is clearly emphasizing that the Bracha of Hamapil should be said right before falling asleep. And it seems like the Mishnah Berurah is saying that this bracha is a birchas hanehenin. This is a bracha that we say upon getting pleasure from something. And therefore you have to say it right before you do the action. We say shahakol miyad baro, and we take a drink of water. We say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and then we eat the bread. There can't be any kind of interruption between it. And therefore, the Mishnah Berurah goes so far as to say, look in Seif Dalet, he says, what happens then if you say the Bracha of Hamapil, and you're falling asleep and tossing and turning, and you're like, kind of thirsty. And then what do you have to do before you take a drink of water? Say a Bracha of Shahakol. But are you able to say Bracha of Shahakol if you already said Hamapil? If you said Hamapil, you should have to sleep right after saying Hamapil. So what does the Mishnah Berurah say? Can you take a drink of water? What are you supposed to do in that situation? He says, if after you say, not Hamapil, but after you say Kriyat Shema, you realize that you're kind of thirsty, you want to have a snack, you want to have a drink of water, it seems that that is permissible. But he says, but if you do that after Kriyat Shema, after you take that drink of water, you should read Kriyat Shema again. But he says, this is what's important for us. Im kvar amar birchat hamapil, if you already said hamapil, izahir bazeh, be very careful. Ki yafsik ben habracha l'sheina. That would constitute an interruption. That would be not allowed to do. So he says, if you said only kriyat shema, you can take a drink of water. Mishnah Berurah says, if you said hamapil, you're locked in. That's it for the night. Fasting from now on until you wake up in the morning. He says, it is so much so considered a birchat hanehenin on pleasure that Hamapil must be said right before sleeping. You should wait until that moment of slumber coming upon your eyelids to say the bracha of Hamapil. And once you say Hamapil, you may not say the bracha of Shahakol. You may not, let's say you go to the bathroom. You can go to the bathroom, but don't say Asher Yatzer afterwards. If you want to talk to somebody, somebody calls you on your cell phone, somebody in the house needs you, someone asks you something, kind of like, after you wash and say hamotzi before you eat the bread. No talking, says the Mishnah Berurah, after Hamapil, because this is a birchas hanehenin. Now, any questions about the Mishnah Berurah's approach before we see the Chai Adam's approach?
What if you fall asleep and then wake up?
Great question. What if you fall asleep, meaning before you say the bracha of Hamapil? Or you're asking, should you say it a second time during the night? Good. Maybe we're going to have time to get to it, but it seems like you only say the bracha once at night. Only one time upon a night of sleep.
It's a little hard, it's a little difficult to put it in the same category as a mitzvah, as a hanehenin, or because you don't have as much control.
Right.
And we can control, when you shouldn't say bracha if you're not in control of when you're going to get it or whatever. But
right. If you're sitting at a table at a wedding waiting for them to serve you the food, you don't usually say a bracha and then wait for the server to come to you with your food. You don't know how long it's going to be. So the same thing when we're falling asleep. We don't know how long it's going to be until we fall asleep. So even if we say a bracha and then we don't talk afterwards, it still seems like a bit of a hefsek. It's still a bit of an interruption just lying there in bed for 10, 20, 30 minutes, however long it takes for us to fall asleep. So it's a little bit difficult to say that it's exactly a birchas hanehenin.
Or you fall asleep in the middle of the bracha.
I actually left that part of the Mishnah Berurah out, but the Mishnah Berurah addresses that question. The Mishnah Berurah says, should you say Kriyat Shema first, or should you say Hamapil first? And he says, you should really say Hamapil as close to falling asleep as you can. But the Mishnah Berurah says, you have to know yourself. If you're the kind of person who might fall asleep in the middle of saying Hamapil, then the halacha is you should first say Hamapil and then Kriyat Shema. Because more important than you say the entirety of the Bracha of Hamapil and then fall asleep while you're saying the rest of the Psukim afterwards. Let's see the approach of the Chai Adam. The Chai Adam says, he's commenting on a different scenario, a different case. He says, Hayashin bayom ein sarach levarich bracha zeh. The Chai Adam is addressing the question of, should you say Hamapil and take a nap? Shabbos afternoon nap. Someone lies down on the couch so they'll take a little shlip. Should they say the bracha of Hamapil? Or is it only a bracha that we say at night? And the Chai Adam says, you don't say the bracha on naps. We'll skip to the bold in line number 3. He says, Yesh lomar t'tiknu ota al minhag ha'olam. The bracha of Hamapil is a blessing that was instituted on the way of the world. Meaning, this is not a birchas haneged. This is not on getting pleasure. This is a bracha about natural phenomenon. A bracha praising Hashem for the amazing natural things that He has created in the world. This is a bracha more similar, says the Chai Adam, not to Shahachal, but to the Birchos HaShachar, let's say. It's a bracha that we say, we wake up in the morning, Pokeach Ivrim, Hashem, you give sight to the blind, Hanotein Le'ya'iv Koach, you give us the strength to wake up in the morning. All these types of bracha that we do, Ozer Yisrael B'Gevura, you give us the strength, you gird us with strength, Ma B'Sharumim, you give us clothing in the world. Things that we do in our everyday life that we praise Hashem for. That we say, Hashem, it is amazing you created this natural phenomenon. And not a bracha, let's say, on drinking your coffee in the morning. It's more similar to a bracha that we say on natural phenomena. The Chai Adam puts it in the category of Brachos Shevach V'Hodah. And what would that mean, according to the Chai Adam, about, let's say, talking after Hamapil? Should you be able to talk after Hamapil if this kind of bracha on a natural phenomenon? It seems like yes, right? We talk after saying Birchos HaShachar. There doesn't have to be a direct connection in between when we say the bracha and when the action happens. But says the Chai Adam, we should do it at night. We don't say Hamapil on naps. We only say it during the night because that's what he says is minhago shel olam. That's the way the world works. We are blessing Hashem on creating sleep, which the majority of the world sleeps during the nighttime. That is the time that would be appropriate to say this kind of blessing. And so we see these two different camps that we're in. Is it a bracha birchas haneged, and therefore you have to do it right before you fall asleep and you're not allowed to talk afterwards? And if you say Kushner, you should say it on naps also. Anytime you take a drink of water, you say bracha on it. So maybe you should say it on naps. Whereas the Chai Adam would say, this is a bracha on natural phenomenon. It's okay if you talk afterwards. You should say it at night. Kind of this general praise of Hashem for creating this amazing thing called sleep.
Just in line with the end of the bracha, who illumines the whole world. Right?
Right.
Which is what Anna's
Kind of this more meta, this praising of the entire world. Any questions we have about the Chai Adam's approach?
So then can you like be Yotze, someone else's bracha? Like can someone say it for the family?
Great question. Can one person say it for everybody? And can someone answer amen at the end of it? Even though it seems like a very personal bracha. Hashem, you put slumber upon my eyelids and made me not have bad dreams. Maybe one person should be able to be motzi everybody in it. Other questions? I'm not sure the answer to it.
It seems more similar to saying the bracha after the bathroom. That's also a natural phenomenon. We're very happy. There we go to the bathroom.
It seems very similar to the bracha of Asher Yatzar, which is definitely this category of Birchot Shevach V'Avodah, that we say upon a natural phenomenon. Good. So,
this is also just reminding me, and some of the language itself is reminding me of Tfilah Haderech, which somebody brought up.
Yes.
And with Tfilah Haderech, I think you're supposed to say it once you're like hit the highway, like once you're on your journey. You're not supposed to say it like sitting in your driveway before you leave.
Right. Once you're kind of already in the process of doing it. Do we have to end now? Or leave it like that? And with the next one? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So there are a few really interesting halachic questions that come up, some shiurs that come up, that perhaps we can answer when we see these two different ways to view Hamapil. Now, let's just see for a moment, how do we conclude? Who's right? The Mishabur or the Chai Adam? Is it Birchas Haneged or Birchas Shevach V'Avodah? So, hey, Robert, good. As all machloket in Judaism, any disagreement ends with, is it this or that? Yes. You get a little bit of both. So I brought you the Piskei Teshuvos in source number 10. The Piskei Teshuvos addresses topics in halacha, and he kind of gives you an overview of what all of the major commentaries, what all of the major poskim say. And we can read inside. The Piskei Teshuvos says, Rubam kikulam shel gedolei hadoros, the very large majority of all of the great leaders of all generations, v'aposkim hiskimu pe achad, they agree one mouth. Everybody has a unanimous decision. L'divrei hachaye adam. Everybody agrees unanimously that this is a Bracha of Hamapil. This is on a natural phenomenon of the world. And therefore, you should be able to talk after. You can say it at night. You don't have to say it right before you go to sleep. However, even though almost all of the poskim say that it's a Bracha of Hamapil, the minhag ha'olam, most people have the custom to be machmir like Mishnah Berurah and to not talk after Hamapil. Now, why do we like to take extra chumras upon ourselves? This is how it goes in Judaism. Oh, a chumrah, yes. Another chumrah, yes. Not to talk after saying the Bracha of Hamapil. But I think that this is often a deterrent to people saying the Bracha of Hamapil. Because if you look on the next page, it's verse number 12, where Moshe Sternbach in Shulos Mahanagos discusses, why don't people say the Bracha of Hamapil? Why is it a phenomenon that people don't really say this bracha? If Chazal said we should say a bracha, and we'll say it outside, what he says is that people are so scared of saying the bracha of batala that they're gonna say it and they're not gonna fall asleep, or that people say the bracha, then they feel so locked in. I say this bracha and that's it. I can't talk. I can't take a drink of water. I can't go to the bathroom. I can't do anything after I say this bracha. It's too scary for people to say that kind of bracha at night. And he says, it's a real deterrent for people not to say the bracha. And so, I remember when I got married, I asked my husband, I would say Hamapil, and then I don't talk afterwards. And then I got married, I said, really? We can't talk after Hamapil? Sometimes I fall asleep in the middle of the conversation. It feels very committal to have to say, okay, now we're going to bed. Everyone say Hamapil. Nobody talk after this. Now it has to be quiet. Everybody has to be silent. So I said, ask around. Ask if really you don't have to talk after Hamapil. And he came back and said that Rav Hershel Schechter, who is the Rosh Yeshiva of YU, one of the most major poskim nowadays in the modern Orthodox community, said, you should be nice to your wife. It's okay if you talk after Hamapil. I said, Rav Schechter, but the Mishnah Berurah says that it's like almost a bracha of batala if you talk after Hamapil. He said, look, everyone really agrees with the Chayei Adam that this is kind of a bracha we say a natural phenomenon, and this is Bracha of Avodah. It's a minhag to be machmir like the Mishnah Berurah. And so if you could be machmir and you could not talk after Hamapil, amazing, shalom, you should do that. But if not, it's okay. You've talked to your wife after Hamapil. It shouldn't be a deterrent to saying Hamapil. And there's a fascinating parallel with how we see that even though we might be fearful that we can't fall asleep, we shouldn't fear it being a bracha of batala. Because there's another mitzvah of sleeping somewhere in Judaism, somewhere that came up very recently, on Sukkot, a mitzvah to sleep in the sukkah. And you turn back the page, the Tosfot in source number 11 discusses why is there not a bracha on sleeping in the sukkah? Sleeping in the sukkah is as integral, if not more important, than the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah. And sitting in the sukkah warrants a bracha. Asher kitshayim mitzvotav tzivanu leishev b'sukkah, to sit in the sukkah. Tosfot asks, why not a bracha leishev b'sukkah? Why don't we have a bracha to sleep in the sukkah? He gives two answers. Tosfot says, one, perhaps the bracha of sitting in the sukkah kind of covers the bracha of sleeping in the sukkah, so we don't need two different bracha. But the more compelling, I think, answer he says is, perhaps you won't fall asleep in the sukkah. It's not so easy to sleep in the sukkah. It's cold, you're exposed to elements, it's not always so nice to sleep in the sukkah. It might be hard to fall asleep. And you might say a bracha on sleeping in the sukkah, and then you might not fall asleep. And then it's going to be a bracha of batala. But how does this inform us that we shouldn't have that fear of not falling asleep after Hamapil? That Chazal did not institute a bracha on sleeping in the sukkah because there was a fear of not falling asleep. And yet we see that Chazal did institute a Bracha of Hamapil, even though we might not fall asleep. And so what it seems like is that we shouldn't have to fear not falling asleep. Meaning, we should be able to say the Bracha of Hamapil, and then hopefully we fall asleep. But even if not, we're still praising God for the amazing gift of sleep that Hashem gives us. And so to close, I just want to zoom out for a little bit. Turn to the Gemara on Daf Sameh, on the last page. We spoke about the value of sleep in Judaism. Is sleep a good thing or a bad thing? The Talmud says sleep 8 hours. The Biblical only slept 2 hours. Is sleep a 60th of death? Or is it tov va'od? Is the best thing God created in creation? Do we really value sleep? We saw 2 different kinds of categories for how to understand the Bracha of Hamapil. We say, is this a Birchos HaShavach or is it a Birchos HaNehnin? Can you talk after Hamapil? Can you do certain actions? Or do you have to go to sleep right after saying Hamapil? And I think when we kind of zoom out and we look at this, even if you look just in the picture of the Gemara, zoomed out of the Bracha of Hamapil, the way that the Gemara presents this Bracha is not by category. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot doesn't say, here are categories of Birchos HaMitzvah, and then list them. Birchos HaNehnin, list them. Shevach HaHoda'ah, and list them. Instead, the Gemara is structured as if a person is walking through their day. The Gemara says, Hanichnas lishin al mitato. When you go to sleep at night, you should say the Bracha of Hamapil. And the Gemara continues, when you wake up in the morning, you should say the Birchot HaShachar. It says, and when you open your eyes, you should say Pokeach Ifrim. And when you take a step, you should thank God for giving us the ability to walk during the day. And then you go and you put on your tefillin, your talis, and you should say a bracha. And then the Gemara kind of goes throughout a person's day and says, this is the bracha that you should say at every step of your day. And I think what the Gemara is trying to tell us by structuring it in this way is that this is the way we are meant to view bracha. It's not that we open up a siddur and we say bracha. It's that we are meant, Chazal is telling us we are meant to walk through our day, and as we encounter natural phenomena that we have during the day, or a mitzvah that we have the opportunity to do during the day, we're meant to say, wow, this is amazing. I am so overcome by my ability to be able to see in the world, Baruch Atah Hashem, Pokeach Ifrim, that you do say to the blind. That I am able to take a step and walk, wow, I have to bless Hashem. I have to bless Hashem for this. My daughter is just turned 10 months old, and for the first time the other day, she stood herself up on her own 2 feet, holding onto the side of the bathtub, and it was this moment of, wow, that's amazing, she can stand. And it's almost as if Chazal is telling us, by structuring the bracha in this way, that every step that we take in our day should feel as magical as a baby's first steps. A baby takes those first 3 steps, and you're amazed, wow, they're able to walk. And yet we get up in the morning and we just, we kind of stroll through the day. And with the way the Gemara is structured is telling us, is that is how we are meant to feel as we go through everything in our day. Masechet Brachot is the first Masechet in all of Shas, clearly placing emphasis that this is such a major part of our religion. It actually is the longest Masechet, content-wise, in all of Gemara, even though what we're up to right now in Daf Yomi, Masechet Bava Basra, is much longer in the amount of dafim, because there's a lot of commentary on it. Masechet Brachot, content-wise, is the biggest Masechet to show us the value of Brachot, that we walk through our day and we recognize we are wowed by the spectacular natural phenomenon that God gives us. And especially sleep, especially Hamapil, at this time of night, and we feel so vulnerable, we feel so exposed, we feel like we're not in control, that we lean into the darkness and we lean into Hashem. Say, Hashem, please help me get through the night and be safe. And thank you, Hashem, for giving me this beautiful phenomenon of sleep. And as we kind of come off of the holidays now, and we're off of all of the Chagim, and we're going into Mar Cheshvan, into this time of routine and monotony in our normal day-to-day lives, my bracha to everyone is that we should be able to recognize and really to appreciate all of the things, even the little things, that God does for us in our daily lives. Thank you all for learning together this morning. I'm here for any and all questions afterwards.
Leora is coming back 3 more times this year, on January 5th, March 1st, and May something or other. What's the May date?
I think 4th.
May 4th. May 4th, in different settings each time. The one in January is in Newton. The one on March 1st is also in Newton on Motzei Shabbat and Coed, and the one on May 4th is in Sharon and Coed. So if you enjoyed this morning, which I'm sure you did, please come and join us for one of the other opportunities to learn with Leora. Also, for just classes for Maya coming up, there's a Hebrew language class tonight on Pirkei Avot. If you know anybody, if any of you or if you know anybody who would be interested in that class, please look on the website for more information. We also have Rachel Danziger is doing her monthly Rosh Chodesh class. That's Tuesday morning. And we have Bracha Shapiro-Krohn coming in a couple of weeks.
November 14th.
Sorry?
November 14th.
November 14th, and she's
Thursday.
coming to, she'll be speaking in person in a private home in Newton, and all of that information is on the website, so please come and learn with us some more. Okay, thank you, Leora.
Yeah.